Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another amazing edition of Meet the Expert with Elliot Kallen. Today is not an exception to the rule of being super interesting. We are going to interview a professor from New York City, from NYU, one of my favorite schools in the country, in Lower Manhattan. My sister went there, just amazing. She's a distinguished clinical professor at NYU, and I'll get to Lisette in just a moment. If you need to reach us, and I would love to talk to you about this, at 925-314-8503. I'm at Elliot, Elliot, at Prosperity Financial Group. And all these editions are on the website at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. So today we're going to compare and contrast and meet in the middle of a highway intersection of public versus private. So if you're somebody who likes the idea of the nonprofit sector, because you know people in that world, it's important to you. You're going to learn a lot today about the nonprofit sector. If you're somebody that doesn't care about charities and nonprofits and where public partnerships meet private partnerships, then this is going to be interesting, but probably not for you. So mail this and send this and get your friends interested when public and private partnerships merge, come together, and really are exciting. And that's where I am, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. Let me welcome our guest, Lisette Nieves. Lisette, welcome to our show.
Hi, Elliot. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, glad to have you on. Let me just tell you quickly about her. She is the president of the Fund for the City of New York. That's Major League now. We're in a big ballpark of Major League people here right now. We'll talk about what they do in a moment. She deals with the Center for Youth. She offers the nonprofit Nobel Prize. She can talk about what that is as well. And she is just a wealth of knowledge of the nonprofit world and the financing of public versus nonprofit, or private versus nonprofit, both public. So we're going to be talking about that completely here. And Lisette, did I describe you properly?
You did. I would just change one thing, which is that what we do with the Sloan Public Award winners is we recognize those people who are in civil service and give them the recognition versus just nonprofits. So
that's great. And there's a difference, again, between civil service and nonprofit and profit and so forth and so on. And we can spend more time on that. So let's talk about what this organization does, why it's important, what your typical day is like, running the size of an organization that you run. Bring us up to date. That's interesting to people that, wow, this is a major charity here.
Yeah, I'm so happy to do that. So the Fund for the City of New York is literally over 55 years old and was started by the Ford Foundation. And it was started by the Ford Foundation because the city knew it wanted to do, New York City government wanted to innovate, but it's always hard to innovate oftentimes in government. You need an intermediary that can allow you to innovate. And that's the way the fund started. It became this intermediary where the private sector, the government sector, other nonprofits were able to collaborate and think through innovation around technology and other things to make it go to scale. So that's our history. When we look at the fund today now, we run a couple of key programs that are critical. One is the partner program, which is where we have over 90 organizations that we do the complete back office for. So what does that mean? So Elliot, what we do is we unleash the burdens of what it means to be a social entrepreneur. Small business leaders have a lot of burdens, a lot of writing of, you have to do your taxes, you have a lot of paperwork, there's a lot of filings that have to happen. It's the same in the nonprofit sector. I think people underestimate, what does it mean to get 501c3 status? What does it mean to keep up with filings? All those kinds of things. And so we do that at the fund, and we function as it's almost cooperative. And now we have 90 organizations that are under us. And they range from organizations like the LGBTQ Museum to other kinds of museums to a Center for Youth. I mean, they're just overwhelming all these incredible groups that would not have been able to kind of survive on their own. And now they can focus on their mission and fundraising. We're able to do the back office. And so that's actually a pretty extraordinary program. And we also provide financing to nonprofits. The public sector, people always think about capital and businesses. The truth is nonprofits need them as well. They need capital. They deal with cash flow much more in some ways because government payment schedules are not as consistent. And so we provide bridge financing if someone is waiting for government financing in New York City. And so we do a variety of things, but we pride ourselves on being that nimble intermediary that's able to respond when other places aren't. So when we had major hurricanes or disasters here, we have been responsive to those. We've been the people that have been able to get the money out to community organizations faster than anyone else. And so we're proud of that.
That's fabulous. So I'll tell you why this is of interest to me. I run Prosperity Financial Group and Prosperity Wealth Management. Those are definitely for-profit financial advisory firms. The combined revenues between the two of them, or the combined assets between the two of them, are beginning to knock on the door of $1 billion. So pretty good size there on that. But my son took his life 9 years ago, and we started a charitable foundation 8 years ago, give or take, called A Brighter Day. It's at abrighterday.info is the website for. And what we realized after reading his suicide note to us, when he said, "Mom and Dad, I've been thinking about this for a long time. I never would have told you how I felt," and so forth. We realized that depression is insidious and people don't understand it. They don't want to talk about it. Schools still think suicide is a bad idea, and they don't want to talk about it on campus. And we wanted to create something that would stop this devastation and destruction. And we've done that. And we're touching now 4,000 to 8,000 families every single month. So here I am, a for-profit organization working at nonprofit, Lisette. So I have enormous respect for the nonprofit world and the foundation world that you're working in, and the bridge loans that you're doing, because I'm doing it. And I know that these charities like A Brighter Day are starving for capital every day of the week. We work hand to mouth. We pull cash in and cash out. The budget is based on cash and fundraising. And sometimes I feel like I'm running for political office because I have to ask everybody for money all the time.
Yeah. Oh, no. I mean, it is truly a labor of love. I mean, I kind of say, I think what people don't realize is that for nonprofits, you're almost in perpetual startup mode, right? If anyone's starting up a private business, they're always asking for money. They're unapologetic about their funding rounds, right? But for nonprofits, we're always in that space asking for money, but we're asking for support. And we know this is what makes America so beautiful. It is this, right? De Tocqueville and others notice this. This voluntary sector, this kind of level of entrepreneurship, the NGOs, the nonprofit organizations that are doing it, it makes a difference in this country. In fact, it's so sophisticated. And I think people think that the nonprofit sector is all small. It's very sophisticated. We have nonprofits that have hundreds of millions of dollars in budgets. I have a $300 million budget, right? Like, just think about the vast, diverse array of nonprofits that have to do everything in some ways, Elliot, that nonprofits have to deal with as well, too, and for-profits. So, for example, every year I have to make sure that I have the best retirement plan for my team, over 600 staff, right? Think about that. Want to make sure that that's important, right? And that's because we consider all of our partner orgs that we're doing the back office for, we have them on our staff headcount, and they're all over the country. So the level of kind of sophistication of HR, systems, inclusion of AI, how we think about retirement plans, healthcare, all those things, those are some of the same difficult choices that for-profits have to make. And so the larger you grow as a nonprofit, I would say we're very similar to what many for-profits have to deal with as well. Our return on investment is a little bit different. We have a social return on investment. But for many nonprofits, they also have fee-for-service arms and other ways of generating revenue, which I think is great and innovative.
That's amazing. And I want to repeat the fact that you have a $300 million budget. That's a good-sized company in the United States at that size. So it's amazing what you're doing. I want to compare public versus private and misconceptions here on that. But I also want to tell you, as I talk to business owners here who are listening to this, and you might say, why am I listening? Because, I wrote a book, it's over my left shoulder, called Driven, and it talks about the phases of entrepreneurship and challenges. And, the first phase is I'm building my business. I can't even think about your charity, Lisette. Every cash, every penny, and every waking hour I have goes into my business. In the second phase, I've now got an ongoing entity, much like the one you're running right now, but profit now. and I'm beginning to enjoy life. I got to put my kids through college. I'm starting to get my 40s, 50s, maybe 60. But in phase three of my life, or the third pillar of my business career, um, now I'm getting not so much long in the tooth, if that phrase still applies today. I don't know. But I'm in my 60s and or approaching 70. My kids are in college or getting out of college. What do I do with the money I've earned, the business I probably need to sell and package properly, and the windfall of cash that I've been wanting for my entire life that's about to come? Do I just give it to my kids and call it a day? Do I create a nonprofit foundation for myself? What's important to me as a person, and how do I give back? Do I want my name on a hospital, on a social hall of a church or a synagogue? And you are there saying, no, you can make a difference in the nonprofit world, and come have coffee with me, and I'll show you what the difference you can make. And that's when nonprofit and profit work really meld together.
Exactly. So, it's always so one is that there is a point in life where people feel that they can offer more time and more treasure towards initiatives that they were not able to do in the past, right? And you're in that. It's a wonderful thing. It's a blessing. Not everybody can feel that at that age. And so, hey, congratulations, Elliot. I would say there are a few ways of thinking about it. What is the best representation of your values? I always say that to folks. What's the best representation? For some, it might be, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe I would love to put my money in a donor advised fund to make sure that me and my family make choices together on values and organizations we want to support. That could be one way of doing it. It could be starting like what you did, Elliot. And I want to say this. I just had a group that we also convene events, and we bring people from all over. And the group we just had was the woman who designed and created the Mental Health Corps. And this is a launch they want to do next year through AmeriCorps. And it's pretty important because we know 1 in 6 high school students has an active suicide plan. Think about that. 1 in 6, right? What you're working on, your solution, how you are doing it, we need 1,000 more Elliots. And we got to make it easier for 1,000 more Elliots to change this, right? Because you talking parent to parent is what's going to make the difference here. So you might decide as a family, let's put it into a brighter day. And that's great too, But what I always say to folks is make it represent your values. And I also look at money, particularly when you think about it, money as trapped energy. The longer you hold on to it, right? You got to be thoughtful. But when you want to give it to an organization, where is it going to have great leverage? And that's important, right? And there's advantages to give to small ones for leverage, and there's advantages to give to large ones for leverage. But I would say the way that you're doing it, I think small organizations are the way to do it.
Well, I hope business owners are hearing that, because there comes a time in your life, when whatever that age is, that you need to think about what's beyond you. Because again, otherwise you just give your kids the money, which is okay too. If that's your plan in life, I made it, I want to give my kids money, great, go for it. But if you can make a difference, if you could touch and leverage and improve the lives, and I work, like I said, in teens and young adult world, changing lives every day, 4,000 to 8,000 a month. But it doesn't matter. That's what's important to me. If curing cancer is important to you, let's work on that. If helping small businesses and is what you do, this public-private partnership, if that you feel makes a difference, because that might have changed your business life and you wish you knew about that 25 years ago, that can change your life too. So, but the key is change lives.
Right. The key is change lives. And so when we think about the fund, people come to us from all different sectors and they'll say, I want to do something. You're going to be the neutral convening ground that will translate so we can all be partners together. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of that role as an intermediary. It matters. It makes sense. And sometimes our sectors, it's hard for them to talk to each other. And so we kind of become that language in between, right? As we say, or functionally the lubricant to actually bring them together and say, you've been talking about a talent pipeline crisis in banking, and X community college is realizing that maybe they need to think about a new certification. What about we link you both and figure out a way of solving both of your needs, right? So there are ways that we do that as an intermediary that I'm really proud of. It's interesting because you made me think about what are the trends we see. So for young people right now, the trends in giving that we see are around mental health, definitely discussions and open about that. Thank goodness, right? And the other is environment. Those two are very, very, very popular with younger generations when I see their level of engagement. So I'm just putting that out. That I've seen, that's where I see energy. That's where I see people wanting to do that. So it's interesting.
We're talking with Lisette Nieves, and she is the president of the Fund for the City of New York. It's a $300 million fund. It's a big boy fund uh, type of thing. And the reason we're talking to her today, and if you need to reach us, it's Elliot, Elliot, at prosperityfinancialgroup.com. And if you want to talk to her, I'll forward questions to her and she'll answer them for you. The reason we're talking to her is because she is the in-between organization, represents the in-between organization between public financing and private enterprise and business owners that want to give back. And we deal with business owners every day. And giving back is part of our mantra. People that know me know for obvious reasons we give back on an amazing charity. But we're not the only game in town. And Lisette even said you need 1,000 Elliots out there to really make a difference. And that's really true. So let me bring it to another subject here, and that is that there are so many misconceptions between the different sectors, public, private, and then within the nonprofit world. I want to talk about that. There are so many sectors, even me being in it, all right, has a different sector. And I'll give you one on financing. And I'm not. I don't want to trash any charities out there in particular. I have my own issues running a charity, but here we give almost 100% of every dollar goes to changing lives. Still have to have staff. I know there are organizations where 50 cents of every dollar goes to overhead. They have a $30 million TV budget that you get. Some organizations that only deal in their program is just in 3 states in the country, but their advertising is in all 50. And you would donate your card to them in a second. And it's amazing how they do that with an amazing television budget. What are these misconceptions? Because even I get a little
Well,
bit sidetracked with that.
I think it's an interesting one. I think it's the same kind of thing where there's a range and diversity in for-profit as nonprofit. There are for-profit companies that care deeply about their employees and staff and want to treat them well and have incredible benefits and learning opportunities. There are some for-profits that treat them horribly and don't care about that, right? It's the range. I think that the diversity of what we think about in the nonprofit sector, some are highly sophisticated in doing that. Some do incredibly much more efficient with direct service than others, right? And this is an interesting one. I think the question does become, especially for the new entrants, like this is why the fund does exist, particularly for the new entrants, because it is so exhausting, all the paperwork pieces and requirements, the charity board, all the things you have to comply with. Like focusing on your mission and raising funds, that's just part of what you do. So how do we remove all the operations frustrations so that smaller new startups are able to feel like they can compete? And that's a big one, right? Yeah, and you know this, Elliot, we've seen this in both sides of sectors, right? Which is, when do you get too bloated? When don't you? How are we able to self-regulate? Do we self-regulate? Either side, right? These are the challenges that I think exist. What I do think is different is that the private sector right now and for many years has been able to experience, play with, and implement more around AI for efficiencies. And the nonprofit sector is typically very left behind, which means this efficiency gap that you're talking about, Elliot, might get bigger if we don't see nonprofits find a way to have greater use of technology for efficiency purposes.
Yeah, I can understand AI. We're all scared of AI and we all have to embrace it. And, I don't know if AI at the end of the day puts us all out of business or not. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. I mean, the human contact is. Let's make that very clear, right? People still need fund managers. They still want people contact. We have a psychological relationship. I think about you on your professional side outside of the nonprofit side. Have a psychological relationship, history and baggage with money, with wealth. People are not ready to outsource that to a machine. They're ready to talk to someone too, right? And that's why you're there.
So let's talk about something that you brought up, which is pretty exciting. And that is, people start entities, profit, nonprofit, for all types of reasons. This is companies 3, 4, and 5 that I've started. I took a test a long time ago to see what I should be doing as a career test. And at the end of the test, they said to me, well, you're going to make a lousy employee. You should always think about being an entrepreneur. And I went home upset. I thought they said something bad to me, but they were right. Because McDonald's is a wonderful franchise. Let's forget if you like quarter pounders or Big Macs. Forgetting that subject for a second, they're obviously very successful, unbelievably successful at what they do. I think I'd make a lousy McDonald's owner, even though that's a type of entrepreneurship, because I can make a better burger. And I would think like that instead of how do I make all these burgers taste exactly the same and sell gazillions of them. I think of how do I make the best burger, and that's not how McDonald's work. They're not trying to be the best; they're trying to sell the most. So it's a little bit different for different personalities. Although I wish I owned 20 of them right now, but that's a different conversation.
Oh yeah, right. No, that is a different conversation. Well, I think there is something around what is the level and where do you target your creative energy as an entrepreneur? Because I think, Elliot, that's where you and I are probably really similar. For me, I have a strong entrepreneurial spirit. I go into any new environment that I'm in, and I've built some other nonprofits as well. What I do is I always look at what is not there versus what is there. Where is there for you to do that? Right. And so that's actually really important for me. So it's like, someone once said to me, said, "Oh my God, Lisette, you just take jobs on handshakes. You don't look at the description." I said, if there's a 10-page description, that's not for me. That's a level of, to me, extreme boundaries of that. And I've been fortunate that I've been able to find opportunities in the nonprofit sector that allow me to express that creative energy in my entrepreneurship, which is some people don't have the heightened creative energy. So you should own that, Elliot, with pride.
Well, you brought up, and I want to kind of end on this note, if that's okay with you. This has been a conversation. This has been a great conversation. And it's really what we've talked about is where the public, private, and nonprofit worlds intersect. You work on that. Most people don't work in the public world. You happen to do it because you're in New York City. Most people work in the private and the nonprofit world intersect. And that's okay because they do every day of the week. And they need to, because nonprofit doesn't exist without the private sector. It's just how it is. All right. And if you go to Carnegie Hall or you go to the original charities out there, they all the Fords, the Carnegies, they have these blue chip names associated with them. And they would not have gotten off the ground without that private sector helping them. And yeah. But you brought up an interesting phrase, and I want to just discuss that. And we'll end with this, if that's okay with you. And this has been great. And that is social entrepreneurship. Because what's happening out there right now is that it's an interesting phrase. The younger generation, my generation obviously believes in charity because we donate the most as a generation. And as a country, we're the most charitable people on the face of the planet. Yeah. So all things said about Americans, you can't take that away. It's amazing, right? And now more in a world where entrepreneurship both thrives and has so much regulation against it in so many states, and I'm in California. And New York City would be no different. The wall of regulation and the wall towards success is so high in the entrepreneurship world. And that's why you're working with 90 nonprofits trying to help them out, because the wall to their success is so high that you can knock those notches off the wall and make it easy. But more and more people of 40 and under are talking about, I want to change lives, have a better quality of life. It's why accounting firms aren't hiring people like they used to. It's why the financial industry like mine can't find young people. It's because they're not interested in working 100 hours a week. The quality of life matters to them. So how do you define social entrepreneurship, and where do you see it going?
So it's so interesting. So when I see social entrepreneurship, I see it really as applying those same entrepreneurial skills to something that has a social return. So that would be the way, Elliot, you're doing it, and for a better day, right? Like you think about those skills that are necessary. So where do I see it? I actually see it as very attractive to young people. One thing about this generation is they all have a few side hustles, right? And so that is actually pretty interesting because what they're doing is piecing together kinds of what are these representations of their values, because they do value a quality of life that probably you and I'm aging myself, would never even have the language for when we started. That was not, you didn't even whisper those words, right? Because it was known so much, even in the government, or not, a hazing period. You had to work, you had to be the last to leave. FaceTime was important, all those kinds of things. This generation thinks differently. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think what it is it's how do we leverage technology? But I am seeing people who care a lot more about social mission. So I actually am seeing people like, here we are, the biggest chunk of my direct staff, not all the nonprofits that we are partnered with, are finance people. And why are they finance people? They're doing finance people for good. They could be accountants somewhere else. They totally can. So I get the young finance folks here. The mission matters. It's a really interesting thing. So I actually feel this is a great opportunity, but it will become a even better opportunity when more young people are infusing technology and efficiency into it as well. We're going to see this sector change radically because there's so much interest from young people.
Well, ending on that note, Lisette, it's been great. Just to remind everybody, if you didn't pick up on a couple of key phrases that Lisette said, values matter, character matters, mission matters, and people, younger people today, under the age of, maybe 35, 40, whatever the demographic is, those traits matter more to this generation than ever before. And maybe you're upset with that generation as a parent because you're wondering that if we ever go to war, do we have the next greatest generation? That's another conversation again.
Yeah, it is another one. It's an interesting one. But there is a service orientation. So that could be good too.
We have a generation that cares, that cares what people goes on. So character matters, and you can be lots of discussions about whether they're on the right track or on the wrong track. But the key here is that it matters, and that if you're in my generation and you're at the looking at the career successful business owner and saying, I want to make a difference, and maybe I don't have that energy level of a 30-year-old, but I have the capital of a 60-year-old, and I can make a difference here. That's what these organizations are for. While your kids may run it, and granted, I know what a lot of adults think of their children or grandchildren are a bunch of dummies and they don't know anything about anything. But that's exactly what your parents thought of you. So,
I'm sure they did. I am so sure they did.
so we've been talking with Lisette Nieves, and Lisette is the president of the Fund for the City of New York. It's a $300 million budget. We're not talking about a little charity here. We're talking about major league, bigger than most businesses that we're all talking to. The 300 million with 600 employees, all the same problems of private companies and misconceptions and budgets and revenue and fundraising and capital growth that we all experience. Lisette, how do people reach you?
That's right. Absolutely. What a pleasure talking to you, Elliot.
How do people reach you if they want to talk to you, Lisette?
Oh, they can reach me at the fund, www.fcny.org, or my email is lnieves@fcny.org.
This has been great. I want to thank you very much. And, you listened to a show all about where these private sectors, public sectors, and nonprofits intersect. And whether you think it affects you or not, it affects every American, because every American is being touched by them in some form, maybe on a very local basis, because you're in Nebraska, or you're in San Francisco, and you really don't care what happens in New York, or you understand that nationally it's touching you. You're just not seeing it, but it definitely is touching you. Lisette, thanks so much, and we'll see you again on the next Meet the Expert with Elliot Kallen.
Sounds great. Thank you so much. Bye, Elliot.